Ladies and gentlemen, ODM party has issued new demands to William Ruto and UDA. I don't know what your thoughts are, but I'm looking at ODM and the conditions they're putting for President Ruto. I don't know whether those conditions will be met. Because according to ODM, if those conditions are not met, then they will not be part and parcel of the broad-based government. Let me take you through some of the conditions which they are putting to President Ruto. And then after going through those conditions, I want to give you my take and probably I'll also seek for your opinion. The first condition they want to put to the president is that the deputy president must be appointed by ODM party. In short, ODM party are saying, we are going to support you, Mr. President. But before doing that, you must give us the running mate. The current running mate is Professor Abraham Kithure Kindiki. And we know ODM is very clear. They want Oparanya to take over. And we actually did an analysis about Oparanya and Kindiki. That demand makes sense. But is the position of the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya that important? For me, I don't think, because I saw how, for example, William Ruto joked with Rigathi Gachagua and just removed him. We saw how William Ruto, as a Deputy President, and Uhuru Kenyatta could not even order toilet papers. So in short, the position of the Deputy President, he serves at the mercy of the President. As we speak, Kindiki is facing challenges in his office. He's being undermined. Most of his roles are being given to Musalia Mudavadi. Musalia Mudavadi is currently more powerful, strictly speaking, than Kindiki. Just like Matiang'i was more powerful than President Ruto. So I'd rather they demand for more slots than the DP. So I don't know whether Ruto will give in to that, but that's a possibility. The other thing they're saying is that they want half of the cabinet secretaries, half of the permanent secretaries, and half of ambassadors. I don't know whether this is real. They want to demand 50-50. In any setup where someone is a president, you can't place 50-50 unless you are coming as equal partners. Is ODM today coming as equal partners? If Raila Odinga was alive and this Linda Mwananchi had not broken away, it would make sense for ODM to demand 50-50. Of course, they must place the demands. But is the 50-50 demand reasonable? I don't know what to think about that. Yeah? But for me, it's a good demand. But will ODM deliver half of the votes? If you remember when Rigathi entered into an alliance with William Ruto, that is not Rigathi really, but Mount Kenya. They agreed on half-half. And not just half-half, they also agreed further on specific slots, which William Ruto actually honored. Like Moses Kuria was given the trade which they wanted. They wanted the DP. They wanted the finance. All of them were given. Why? Because William Ruto's election in 2022 depended fully on Mountain. And the Mountain was actually delivering. And at the end of the day, Mount Kenya delivered for Ruto. ODM are also demanding for zoning. On this, to some extent, I agree with them. But the problem with zoning is that they might mess up the nomination. If they mess up the nomination, other parties will get opportunity because Raila is no longer there. Apart from other parties getting opportunities, voter apathy might be witnessed. People might say, our guy has been rigged out, we are not turning out. In the last election, it was alleged that almost 700,000 voters from Nyanza did not turn up to vote. Why? Because all MPs from Nyanza, apart from one, were given direct tickets. All of them, apart from one, were given direct ticket. And therefore, those who are their opponents said, okay, we are not going to mobilize, we are not keen on this. People were disappointed. So that's likely to happen. But zoning is good for them, for their political survival. Because with the kind of the government support, the resources, if you have to subject ODM leaders and against UDA, and the president decided to support UDA leaders in a fair contest, they'll defeat. So they'd rather have UDA leaders, for example, from Nyanza, join ODM and compete. Equal footing. Then even if they win, then they win under ODM. So that those numbers will help them with the political parties funds, which is the fourth point, the fourth demand, which they are also putting, that they want the release of political parties funds. ODM is owed a lot of money by the treasury because it's money which they legally qualified for. If they can get this money, probably they can campaign. And they're telling the president, give us this. So in my view, that's a fair demand. But should William Ruto heed into some of these demands? He will have to be, he might be forced to do that. Because as we speak, William Ruto finds himself in a very tight corner. The mountain is gone. He had hoped on forming Western Alliance, that is the Luo Nation and the Luo Nation, and the ODM brigades, the coastal region. As we speak, Sifuna is causing political havoc in the Luo Nation. So Ruto is in a place where he's not seeing light at the end of the tunnel. But ODM has a light which is a bit dim the other end. So they want to use it. So for me, for William Ruto to meet some of these demands, he will have also to put some counter offer to ODM. Number one is that, and this is a question, by the way, can ODM party guarantee William Ruto that if they are given half, they are given the deputy, they will be able to deliver votes? Because for William Ruto, the most important thing is the votes, not what we are demanding. Can you deliver? For ODM to deliver to the president, I doubt if it's about the position. It's about selling what the president has done so far. So that if, for example, they believe that, we worked with President Ruto, he did this, then they should be able to explain to people so that people get those. Because as we speak, the biggest challenge William Ruto is facing is that people believe that he is. People believe that he has not delivered. So that's something they should work on. So they should be able to guarantee Ruto that we are going to deliver. But can they guarantee the president? If you are Ruto, can Gladys Wanga, Mbadi, and Junet convince you that they are going to deliver for you half of the votes? If you're them. If I were Ruto, that one is something I cannot. Yeah, I know I can support them, get some votes, but that guarantee is not there. Again, if you look at it critically, some of the demands they are placing on the table might not work. Why am I saying this? If you want 50% of the cabinet, what will show that the other guy is not the leader? Because if you're a leader, even if in the Supreme Court, there are normally 7 judges. So that there must always be someone with a higher number. And the demands of half, in most cases, might end up causing a lot of chaos after the election. Because now, after the election, the realities will now dawn on people. Yeah? And who will fund the ODM campaigns? Because we are saying, and it's a fact, that the 2027 general election is going to be the most expensive election in the history of the Republic of Kenya. Who is going to fund ODM activities? Because we know that currently, ODM activities are being funded by political parties fund, which is not enough. We also know that the man who used to fund ODM activities in the name of Raila Odinga is no longer there. We also know that because of this fallout within ODM party, some of the people who used to fund ODM party will not be willing to put their money in ODM the way they used to do. So which means if you expect President Ruto to fund you, you can't also expect him to share positions equally. In a fair situation, if you expect to support the president, support him, then exchange with positions. But if you want to support him, put demands, then he still funds the campaign, hiyo ni shida. And that's how Raila Odinga found himself in trouble with Mwai Kibaki. Because at the end of the day, it boils down to the realities of politics. Raila campaigned for Kibaki on a wheelchair. But some of the demands he placed on the table, Kibaki could not meet. And because Kibaki could not meet, his team started seeing Raila as an enemy and mistrust. So if they had just agreed that let us support Kibaki without some of these demands, like ODM are already supporting Ruto and they've said they're supporting it, the president. So for me, I don't see why they should actually put demands. They should play some of these demands after the election, because I know we might even have a rerun, which means Ruto will poach either Kalonzo or he will poach Sifuna, depending on who becomes number 2, or even Matiang'i, and then make deals with them. So in that case, you can't expect the president to share half of his half so that you'll have a quarter. It can't work like that. But I think some of these demands are good for ODM party. They must place them on the table and negotiate real hard. I don't know what to think. That's my take. Until next time, Makwiny, bye-bye.